You do not need to build a SaaS to get rich as a developer. And I know that goes against everything that you've been seeing on your feed. Every single indie hacker posting their monthly revenue screenshots. Every single person telling you to vibe code 12 different apps until one of them hits. But I went down that exact road not too long ago when I quit my $250,000 software engineering job to build products. And months later, all I had to show for it was $258 in my bank account. Then I switched models. And that same exact skill set that I had took me to over $450,000 a month in revenue. So in this video, I'm going to show you why SaaS is mathematically the worst first business a developer can pick, the one thing the successful SaaS guys have that you do not, and the model that's actually making engineers rich in years instead of decades. And by rich, I don't just mean money. I mean you own your time, you own your income, and you never have to ask permission for a Tuesday off ever again. Now, first and foremost, let's talk about why everybody tells you to build a SaaS as a software engineer in the first place. Because fundamentally, it is the closest thing to what we do. We write code, so naturally we assume that when it comes to a business, we're gonna write the code once, it's gonna sell forever, and money's gonna come in while we sleep. And we're gonna get infinite leverage, and this is really the ideal dream of a software engineer. But as a software engineer, it's also the perfect trap for us because it plays directly into what we're already good at. We get to sit down, build something behind our screens, and we skip the part that most of us hate, which is talking to strangers and actually having to sell. But here's the big problem with all of this. You see, SaaS doesn't necessarily remove the selling part. It just pushes it down the road. And by the time you actually get there, it is way harder to sell. Think about what a SaaS actually requires you to win at. You need to pick the right problem with zero customer conversations. This is how most people approach it. You need to build the right solution for the people that you've never even talked to in the first place. Then you need to market it at scale against potentially funded competitors to strangers on the internet who have never heard of you nor your SaaS and have 50 other alternatives pretty much one click away. So for most software engineers who go down this road, they take the one skill that they're missing, which is sales, and they bet the entire business on the hardest version of it. That's pretty much like taking your weakest link in a system and putting it directly into the critical path. No actual software engineer would ever design a system like this, at least not a software engineer who knows what they're doing. But that's exactly what pretty much building a SaaS as your first business is. And if we talk about time to first revenue, that's a completely different conversation. You're gonna spend at least 3 months, potentially up to 6, even a whole year building. No revenue the entire time, no feedback from the market until it's already too late. And during all of this, you're burning savings to pretty much test a hypothesis that you could have tested with one single conversation. And don't get me wrong, I did this myself multiple times. I've had SaaS ideas, side projects I've worked on, e-commerce projects, all of it. Every single one had the same exact failure mode. I would build for months, launch it, and then I would sit there hoping that somebody would show up. Where I would build, I would run ads, and nothing would work. Nobody showed up, and because I had no fundamental way of getting the thing in front of many people, I only figured that out after pretty much building the entire thing and everything was done. Now, here's the part that the internet will not tell you, and this is the one that personally stung me the most when I figured it out. If you go look at all the indie hackers who actually made it, so all the guys that got extremely rich off of SaaS, most of these individuals, if you take a closer look, who's actually buying their product? Well, most of the time it's their audience. So they built the distribution first, so they had years of content, hundreds of thousands of followers, and then they sold software to that exact audience. Now, this is not the case with everybody, but the vast majority. Because understand, in the SaaS game, it's never really about the product, it's all about the distribution. And in this case, the audience, the distribution was that exact business. Software was the thing that they just sold to. So what you have is the SaaS, but you're missing the audience. So when you copy their exact playbook, you're running without their distribution. So it's like having a code with no infrastructure and then wondering why nothing actually works. So ask yourself honestly, if even half of these guys had 0 followers, would the product make any money? And we most likely already know the answer. So the odds are stacked against you on the product side of things, but where are they stacked for you? Now that was the question that actually got me out of the hole that I was in, because once I actually asked this out loud, the answer was pretty much sitting right in front of me. But as of the time I'm making this video, 99% of people have no idea what AI can actually do. They have a completely warped view of it. You as a software engineer live in a bubble where everybody's arguing about which model is better at coding and what each one can do. Meanwhile, there are over 30 million businesses in the United States alone that need to figure out this AI stuff. And the person that's running, let's say, the HVAC company, the dental office, the logistics firm, the law office down the street, well, they have nobody technical that they can actually trust to give them the answers that they need. And you, the person right now watching this who can actually build this stuff, well, you're competing with a million other developers for the attention of internet strangers instead of being the only technical person in these rooms 10, 15 minutes away from your house. So think about how lopsided that actually is. Online, you're gonna be one of millions of developers, but on a local level, you might genuinely be potentially the only one. So why would you fight for scraps in the most crowded market on earth when there is literally an empty market with your name on it right next to you? Of course, this is applicable to most those of you in Europe and of course Northern America. But you essentially have real conversations with the people who have one problem. You charge real money to solve that one particular problem. You get revenue in the first few weeks instead of waiting a year to find out if anybody actually cares about that problem. And while you do all of this, you are learning the exact skills that the SaaS path let you avoid initially. So how to talk to customers, what they'll actually pay for, how to price, how to close, how to deliver, and at the end of the day, these are all skills that decide whether any business is actually going to work, including the SaaS that you might build later, a few months or a few years down the line. And look, I get the natural objection already forming in your head right now. But Pugo, services don't scale. It's just another job. Isn't that still trading time for money? There's no real leverage in it. Well, two things I like to point out. First, a job you own with, let's say, 50 plus margins, where you set the price, you set the hours, is gonna beat a salary with a ceiling every single day of the week. And second, services fund the product. I'm not saying services are the end game. My first invoice was about $16,000 from one conversation with a local business owner that I had. And that was a time when I only had 258 bucks in my bank account. Every single failed product before that, I built first and pretty much had to pay that a user would show up. The money was never behind the product. It was on the other side of a conversation, always. So once the cash was flowing, only then did I actually productize my offer, and that's what allowed me to scale to over $450,000 in revenue. So the service business doesn't necessarily replace the SaaS. It actually funds the SaaS. It is a prerequisite as a first-time entrepreneur. Except you don't have to give up any equity, and the investors are called customers instead of actual venture groups. And this is not just me. This is the interesting part. This is repeatable. Paul, a senior engineer inside my startup accelerator, Code to CEO, he made more money in January and February of this year than he made in an entire year at his 9-to-5 last year. He's at over $50,000 a month right now. Marco was at Microsoft. He quit, doubled his salary in 20 days, and picked up equity on top of everything. Sandra, MIT-trained software engineer, working 2 engineering jobs at the same exact time, completely burnt out. She built her own business, out-earned both salaries combined, and quit both inside of a year, now working on her own time, making more money. Dom, from Sydney, got so in demand as a consultant in Sydney that he started billing for over 1,000 AUD an hour, and Anthropic even made him a cloud community ambassador for the city of Sydney. None of these individuals built a product first. Every single one of them started with conversations with another human being. And across all of our founders inside Code to CEO, the average time to a first client is about 47 days. And the average first deal, if they're located in the United States or Europe, is over $15,000. I would genuinely love for somebody to show me the SaaS route that gets a first-time founder $15,000 in 47 days. Because in all my years around this space, I have never once seen it. And keep in mind how I am highlighting first-time founder. A veteran getting into a SaaS will obviously be able to outperform this. But I want you to compare the two paths honestly, because at the end of the day, this is just going to be another engineering decision for you. So you have to evaluate it like one. Path one, you're going to spend potentially months, if not even a year, building a product. Statistically, it is more likely to fail than succeed. And you're going to learn almost nothing about customers because you never talked to any, you never put yourself out there, you avoided the comfortable tasks, and you burned your runway finding out the entire thing was doomed to fail. Path two, you're profitable in your first couple months. Every single week, you're actually learning directly from paying customers. And if you still want to productize and build a SaaS, You now have the cash flow, actual market knowledge, and the list of clients who already trust you and will buy it on day one should you launch your SaaS. So no, you do not need to build a SaaS to get rich as a developer. All you really need is one problem, one conversation, and one client who says yes. The skills you already have, you've had them the entire time. The only thing that is missing from you is to take the action to put yourself out there and actually understand that the solution to all your problems lies with other human beings. And if you want to know the exact system for how you can use this to make your first $100,000 a month as a software engineer, then you need to watch this video next over here. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.